It's 7 o'clock in Southern California, and time for the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable for August 24th, 2017. This is Mike in 6HKH, your net control. This roundtable is held every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 0200 UTC on XRF 002 Alpha, and a constellation of X reflectors, including XRF 310A, XRF 555A, and XLX 212 Alpha. This is a technical net dedicated to D-Star and Open Digital Systems. It is a group effort. To join a discussion, start a topic, or to ask a question, just key up when I call for stations. But please remember, don't quick key or tailgate. I will pause regularly to let you key up, and I ask that participating stations do the same. Now, we don't take formal check-ins or do a roll call just to give us more time to talk D-Star. Now, Net Control is online at roundtable.tech. Roundtable is all one word, .tech. Just put that in the address field of your favorite browser, and it will take you to the D-Star Roundtable forum board, where you will find the forum's real-time chat feature that's called the Shout Box. And you can use that to contact me, as well as to post information that's relevant to the topic at hand, such as links and quick notes. Now, we ask the stations offering a web address in conjunction with their presentation to post the URL or DNS in the Shout Box, so that those listening now or later can link to that website or document location. Again, the URL to play along with us is roundtable, all one word, .tech, T-E-C-H. At the close of tonight's roundtable, the Shout Box is moved to the Shout Box history above the general roundtable discussion board. Podcast listeners get the Shout Box downloaded automatically, but we keep the Shout Box post so that those listening later on, by recording or otherwise, can see what all the excitement was and take a look at the posts that we discussed. We're going to start with announcements tonight. If you have anything of a dated nature, upcoming Hamfest, change to your system, things that would be of a general nature you want to bring to their attention that really isn't a topic per se, this is when we take it. Well, you guys know what announcements are, and I'm sure this is not the only net you listen to, so stations with announcements, please key up now. All right, nothing sooner heard. It came to my attention that the solar eclipse net that was run, obviously during the solar eclipse, was an apparent success. It was held here on the constellation of X reflectors. And on Monday, Jeff reported the net control at VE6DV. I just, for a moment, forgot his call sign. Shouldn't do that. That for the roughly 4 hours of operation, that there were a fair number of stations that checked in and made some reports. A lot of stations were listening, and it seems to have turned out to be a big success. And not too bad for a net that's probably the first and last that will be able to participate in, but it was kind of fun to hear it, and more fun, I suppose, to have it here on the constellation of X reflectors. So to all of those that handled this, there were a series of net control stations. I think they're worthy of mention. Jeff VE6DV was one, KG5GJT Brian, Tim KE0LMX, and Roger KG7SWZ. So thanks, guys, and looks like it was a good time with had by all. Let me check to see if any of the net control stations, if they're here with us tonight, want to give a brief report on that net. We'll take you now. Please key up. All right, didn't see anything on that, but it was worthy of mention, I suppose. All right, so checking out the shop box for tonight, we've got a couple of posts, and it's just so sad to hear that a station did not have a good time at Hamfest. I mean, that's kind of tough to do, but the Huntsville Hamfest was disappointing to at least one station. Maybe we'll hear about that later on. Also, there's a post from KK6MYS about the new ICOM, or the upgraded ICOM ID31. And if anyone's taking a look at that radio and would like to give a quick overview of what it is and why ICOM would think to do that, we'd sure appreciate hearing from you. Let's take you now. Stations, please key up. Well, apparently nobody was excited to check that out. The link that is posted there is had to be translated because it apparently was posted on well, it was copied apparently from a Japanese site by a website known as QRZNow.com, and it's interesting because they are in fact, and I questioned this last week. I said, why would they go back several radios, ICOM that is, and especially the ID31, which has been around for quite a long time. Actually, I have one here. It's one of my favorite radios. But they have upgraded it. It's now called the ID31 Plus, and it does in fact exist, despite my reservations and some from others, but then we didn't have any knowledge of it. But one station that did report it was right on. But here's the odd thing. The main new features of this radio is, now guess what? This is ICOM, access point mode and terminal mode. And as we've talked about in the past with the two newest radios from ICOM, both one's plus 2 and one's a mobile, they brag about the access point mode providing a wider range of communications with new functions. And terminal mode, you can enjoy quote-unquote long-distance communication via the D-Star repeater network in the vicinity without a repeater, end quote, but an optional data communication cable and a special application are required. So, without trying to solve that problem of having to drag a cable around and connect it to something else, which certainly limits the mobility of an HT, the idea of which, of course, is to be mobile or pedestrian, otherwise moving around, because otherwise you would just use a base, I think. They instead just, I guess, adopted the unbelievable, in my view, access point mode and terminal modes, neither of which are of any value to U.S. operators. And to make matters worse, added an optional data communication cable, which of course is required with the other two new radios. Now, what is not known, oh yeah, you can choose 3 new colors. You got silver, gold, and red. Now, it does not say here that in fact it's going to be a North American release. So, it is entirely possible that this radio may be available only in Japan or the greater Asian market, perhaps European markets, where having a wired access point capability and wired terminal mode capability may be a good thing. But you just never know. So I'm going to call again if anybody has looked into this and can confirm it, and we will certainly take it off the list of items to discuss if this is a Japan-only market radio. Not that we exclude Japanese stations participating or listening, but there's no purpose in getting into it every night until it gets released, or every net until it gets released if it's of limited distribution. So, anything further? Does anybody know any more about the Icom 31 Plus? Please key up.
G7VRV. I'm on an ICOM ID51A plus 2 that has terminal mode and access point mode. I'm not really sure how to use it yet, but I know you're talking about the 31, but I have a 51 in my hot little hand. KG7VRV.
VL2RO.
KG7VRV. All right, thanks for that. And also, we have ZL2RO. We'll take Phil now, and then I have a question for the first station. So ZL2RO, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much there, Mike. Yeah, this is ZL2RO. Now, I've got the 4100, and it's got that terminal mode and access point. And yes, it's a bit of a disappointment that you can't actually use it or figure out how to use it for that matter. I just thought I'd put that in there, but I know, however, I know you're talking about the new but old 31A Plus. Very interesting. So back to net control.
Yeah, thanks for that, Phil. I remember when the 4100 first came out, we called for stations to see if they had bought it and what they thought about it. And I recall that you reported it's a great radio. It sounds good. It does have some new features in addition to the access mode and terminal mode you liked it generally. I think that's still the case. You can tell me if that's different. And it has Bluetooth, and you know it's a new radio, and it should sound good. Maybe that doesn't receive and transmit. Maybe smell good too as well. But we have yet to have a station key up who either purposefully try to figure out how to use the access point terminal mode or terminal mode and access point capabilities, perhaps even investing in the cable and trying to get it to work. I'm sure stations have, and I'm sure that we've had stations key up that said, yeah, I put it to use, but my God, why would I? I mean, it doesn't make any sense in light of the current state of affairs with hotspots and access points. I mean, why would you want a have to drag around a device? I mean, you got your HT in your hand, and what, you sling the cable over your shoulder, and maybe drag the device that's connected to behind you as you walk around that. I don't know. So KG7VRV, just out of curiosity, did you buy that radio for those two features, or did you get it as a new D-Star radio? Or did you just think that the other features that a new radio has attracted you? I mean, I would just be interested in knowing if in fact you're going to spend any time trying to figure out how to do the terminal mode and access mode, the KG7VRV. Go ahead. Oh, no, we didn't lose him. KG7VRV. Are you able to come back to us? Go ahead.
Download the software, but haven't been able to figure out how to get it to work. And I agree with you. I mean, the terminal mode and the access point mode, I guess it'd be good if you're sitting at home, but I can't see it, being of any real use as an HT. Yeah, I do love this radio. It's 31 4100 out in the RV, and on how to use terminal mode and access point mode, KG7 VRV.
Alrighty, I think it's Todd. Yeah, you were about a third of that time, had some packet loss. You were R2D2 to me, and on the other reflectors, it seemed to be the same. We got most of it. So I'm just curious, did you buy the radio for, let me just ask you straight out, why did you buy that radio? Not that it's a bad thing to do, but I mean, you didn't buy it for these features, I presume. Back to KG7 VRV, and just pause a bit before you key up, and then hopefully you can get yourself in a better location if you're talking through a repeater. If not, hopefully the R2D2 will clear up. Go ahead.
No, you're correct. I didn't buy it in particular for those features. It was the price. It was cheaper than I bought it off of eBay, and it was like $389, which is a lot cheaper than just the plain ID 51As. Yeah, the Plus 2. It was the latest and greatest ICOM model. I wanted an HT, and mostly for the portability. I'm going to be flying to DC, and I was going to take my open spot and this HT with me.
All right, we got you that 100% that time. All right, that's probably the case. All right, anything further on either the terminal mode or access modes on the two new and perhaps now three most recent devices, D-Star radios from ICOM, the IC31. Well, wait a minute. Let me just make sure that get the correct terms. The IC, it's the ID. Yeah, they're going to keep saying ID31 plus. Anything further, please, Kia.
VK4TUX.
VK4TUX, welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, Mike, and the net VK4TUX. I just joined in actually. I'm just making some MMDVMs up here, soldering on listing in. I just was interested in the last gentleman. I overheard him saying that he was having trouble using the terminal mode, and I just wondered what the problem was. I guess if he's got everything in place, if he's got an access point terminal registered at the G3 gateway he's registered on is one requirement he needs to have, and I'm not sure what he's using for the application, if he's using an Android or his PC. In either case, he needs to have open 40,000 UDP access on that system for it to work as well. And basically, he just needs to log into the G3 gateway that he's registered on with an access point terminal set up as well. So maybe one of those things aren't in place that he can't use the call sign routing feature in the access point or the terminal access in the Plus 2. I'm using a Plus 2 right here now as I'm talking to you, and I've used the feature a few times. It's sort of one of those things you try out just to see if it works and get the T-shirt and go home, So I don't use it much, as we all know. It's not very very popular because it's call sign routing, but I've certainly tried it here, and it works fine if you have all those things set up. That's all. Back to net control, Mike, VK4TUX 7.
All right, Adrian, thanks for that. Yeah, the station actually wasn't terribly interested in it, essentially. He bought the radio because of the price, and the terminal mode and access mode weren't of great interest to him, and particularly because of the cabling, and he wanted an HT, but He hadn't set it up yet, and I don't know that he will. But for those that did want to experiment with it, I mean, it is there, and as you said, it's call sign routing essentially. We appreciate the tips and tricks to get it up and running if so inclined. Thank you, Adrian. Anything further on the ID31A? No, I don't even know if it's going to be an A or an E. It just says ID31 Plus. Anything further on that? Or any questions regarding terminal mode, access mode? Before we move on, stations, please key up.
Yeah, this is Todd again. I have the software loaded onto my laptop, and I just, I'm new to D-Star. There isn't the manuals and the literature for the ICOM radios. It's pretty vague. It'd be nice to have an Elmer help me, walk me through it, and I get a lot of information off the nets and online, and basically programming the software, for that call sign routing. I've never done it before, so I really have no idea what I'm doing, but would love to try it out. I got it set up and ready to go. I just need to tinker with it some more. AG7VRV.
Well, welcome to D-Star, and you got a fine radio. Whenever somebody talks about call sign routing, it opens up a Pandora's box because it is not favored much, especially here in the U.S. and other parts of the country, because it's kind of a dangerous mode in the sense that you never know what's happening at the other end. If you key up, you might end up in the middle of a net. You could end up in the middle of a QSO. It's something of greater relevance to the Japanese market than it is really anywhere else in the world. It is a feature, and I suppose it's worth trying, but you have to be careful about it. There are a lot of resources out there, both on Google, if you want to search there, as well as on the D-Star Roundtable forum board. There's also a good amount of information on the W6KD boards about this as well. And here on the constellation of X-Reflectors, there's all kinds of people that would be, more than happy to help you with any aspect of D-Star. During the course of this, we try to keep the discussion a bit advanced. Not always, but if you have any difficulties or need some help or need some places to go and look, key up and just say so, and we'll be happy to help you. There's just a lot of reading you can do, and for that matter, you never know. I think you're in the Seattle area. There ought to be plenty of people that can give you a hand if you need it, maybe even in person, because we have a fair number of stations that listen or participate in the Seattle area. So, any suggestions for Todd as far as a resource in getting up to speed on that radio programming? Or if you like, you can post it in the shout box. And anyone have any? Let's keep it to a minimum because we can spend hours beating up call sign routing. But any thoughts for him before we move on, stations, please key up.
VK4PUX.
Okay, Adrian, VK4TUX. Go ahead.
If I'm Mike, I thought I did hear Todd mention that he tried, channel mode, etc., and it didn't work for him. That was my original response, and that's what I was curious about. You didn't seem to mention that there, Mike, in your response to me, but I did hear Todd say that, so I was curious on why I couldn't do it. And Todd, if you send me an email, vk4tux@gmail.com, I'll go through it with you via email and get you and try it out with you. I can try it out with you directly from here through myself using the same system, so we could do a QSO like that together and try it. And one thing to remember is also that the True D-Star actually was built on call sign routing. That is actually in the original protocol from Japan. And it's not an issue if, both parties are careful not to be linked to a reflector and so forth before they do it. If they're just on an isolated system that's unlinked, there's certainly there's no problems then. If each side knows what they're doing, I guess the problem comes in when people just start call sign routing the systems without prior sort of organisation. And I respect the fact that you can't hear what's going on before you make a call. But certainly it's good fun for two people to try it out if they organise it previous and just to see how it works, just for the heck of it. But so if Todd sends me an email to vk4tux@gmail.com, I can certainly go through it with you, Todd, and help you out on that if you want to try out the feature. Back to net control. And also, Mike, I just wanted to mention too that the cables do come with I heard you mention a couple of times in the past that you have to buy a cable to do this stuff with the ID51 Plus 2, but it actually does come with the cable. It's provided with the radio in the deal. Back to net control. N6 HKH, VK4TUX, over.
Well, Adrian, first, thanks for your offer of help and KG7VRV. Hopefully you copied that. And Adrian is a great station to check it out with. I'm sorry if I misunderstood. I thought you said you didn't get it for those features, the access point terminal mode, and hadn't put it to use. And I apologize if I misunderstood that. But you can't ask for a better station than Adrian to help you get up to speed on it, and with some guidance, use it, because you could draw the ire of stations that are at the other end. And it is, all of us, I think, have tested out call sign routing. Usually it doesn't go beyond the single test. It isn't, in fact, on linked systems, it's actually, in some systems, many actually, it's prohibited. You have to unlink the reflector, or that is a repeater from the reflector, because it can just cause all kinds of trouble. But on a one-to-one basis, such as what VK4TUX suggested, it should work pretty well. So you guys can hopefully get together. All right, are there any other new gear or devices that we should be discussing? We'll have to wait to see what happens in the ID31 Plus, if it does make it out, and it is for general release. But anything else that's in your hot little hands that you'd like to talk about that we should be concerned with, please key up.
W6KD.
And we welcome Bob, W6KD. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mike and Lynette. Yeah, a couple parting thoughts on the ID31. I'm rather disappointed, honestly, personally, that this has proved to be just following the same roadmap as the 51 plus 2 and the 4100. The debate about using call sign routing aside, this feature is only useful with the REF reflectors running G3 software, which these days is becoming a smaller and smaller minority. It has no bearing and no utility with X reflectors, with DCS reflectors, with XLX reflectors, with transcoding in the DMR, with all the exciting new things that are happening. This is not one of them, and this one actually doesn't interact with that stuff. So to pay a premium price for that feature on a radio when really, the good stuff is migrating in a whole different direction is disappointing, like I said. So for anyone, for any new folks that are out listening, thinking about what radio to get, again, I strongly discourage spending, paying a premium for the access point and terminal mode on an ICOM radio. Any of the radio, if the 4100, it's essentially about a $200 premium on the radio to buy that capability, and it doesn't take you really where the action is. So I would just throw that caution out there, and there's for those that want it and know how to use it, it's there for you. But I can't say that I'm excited, and I just I'm just shaking my head here. Anyway, back to the net, W6 Kitty.
All right, Bob. Well, notice says you have to get excited over a radio, and as the station that had bought the ID51A Plus 2 recently, he got it for the price. And, if the price is right, that's the reason for purchasing it. I agree with you, and I have not had, I don't think, back when the 51A Plus 2 came out in the 4100, I don't think we had any stations that actually would voluntarily say that they got those radios for those features. Now maybe they did secretly just because they wanted to have them, but it does not make a great deal of sense, especially if you're paying a premium. But if you're not paying a premium, they're just like any other that is terminal mode and access mode. If you have no interest in them, it's like anything else on the radio. You just don't use it because you don't like it. Not all features have to be put to use. Understanding what they do probably is important. But all right, thank you. So, is there any software or firmware updates that we should consider for any of the radios that are not automatically pushed that would be of interest generally? That is something that is optional, maybe I should say. If you know of any, if you have some to talk about, please keep up.
VK4TU.
VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I'm not on the subject, but I just wanted to make one final comment on the previous subject, and regarding Bob's comments, which I agree with in concept with the Plus 2 and the G3 features regarding access point and terminal point. Well, I was a guy that had a shot at Darren Storer from the Trust Server team regarding, he put out a public post many months ago about the exciting new features of G3 and the Plus 2 and all these extra things you could do with it. And a lot of people went out and bought the radio on that device, and very disappointed that they were stuck with call sign routing, and they couldn't even use it with D+, which was a big disappointment. And I get what Bob's saying about the other reflectors, which has been an ongoing thing. The G3, G2 system and the Plus 2, camp is that's the one area of D-Star, and and what's there with the XRF and the Constellation and all the other things is another area, and they don't necessarily have to amalgamate or combine or link to each other or whatever. I think there's plenty of happy campers in both camps. But all I'm saying is that I feel there was a bit of deception, put out regarding the features of the Plus 2 radios, etc. So I'm not a promoter that people should go and buy Plus 2s and whatever for those features. And I was actually the guy that had a shot at that particular guy on the Trust Server team about his original post regarding these new exciting features, etc., which I said to him aren't really so exciting. So I just wanted to make that point, just so people knew where I stood on it. But back to you there, Mike, and I'll let you get back to the topic. VK4TUX.
I can't disagree with you, Adrian, and I appreciate you reminding us that the new ICOM software and the new G3 is it has some features, but it's just, I repeat what you said. You said it perfectly. We appreciate it. All right, any reports from ham fairs or hamventions that you'd like to give? We've got one posted in the shop box. I don't know that would deter people from going to Huntsville. If you live nearby, but still, if there was something of interest or you were at a ham fair, hamvention, ham convention, and a new device or product or software or hotspot was displayed, whether you could buy it or not, and you'd like to let us know about it, we'll take you now. Please key up.
Mike, I don't know if you're copying. I've tried to get in 01 Hotel November.
Well, I guess you didn't try hard enough until this last time, but you're here, Brian. 01HN. Go ahead. Z01HN. We got you that time. Go ahead. Z01HN and 68KH on the blind. I hope you're not transmitting, but we got that one key up that you were trying to break in and then didn't hear anything further. So if you are listening, try it again. I don't think we're quick keying yet, but we certainly avoid it. Just key back up again when you think you're ready to go. All right, any follow-up to any discussions from last week? Anything that people either listened to on the podcast or a recording they wish to add to any of the topics from last Thursday? Or if there's an update, correction, supplemental information that you'd like to add to those topics, let's take you now. Please key up. Alrighty, nothing there. So, there's some excitement in the transcoding news, and it's slowly gotten out, and I think it's time that we take 4K transcoding right to the top of the roundtable, such as, well, it can't be the top, but the beginning of the main topics. You're about 37 minutes into the roundtable, so I'm going to call on K6KD to tell us what the excitement is and what we need to know as the constellation of X reflectors implements 4K transcoding. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mike and Annette. Yeah, we have, several days ago, about a week ago, we had the transcoding server operational with all the hardware required. That's the part that does the heavy lifting. And this week we got the upgrade implemented the upgrades necessary for the X reflector to interact with the transcoding server. So we have it here, and it is for the most part it is functioning, just as we heard before when we were testing testing the installation that was in Europe. The quality is excellent, both DMR to D-Star and D-Star to DMR. There's still some loose ends that we want to just work out before going public. We don't want to have what I think are ultimately just loose ends that could be distractions. I think we want to work those out first, and we're working closely with the with the teams in Europe also, and so I think it's going to be soon. It's just it's hard to say how quickly the little things resolve themselves, but I think it'll be soon. The concept is to, because we've got such excess capacity, to work with other organizations to let them use some of the excess capacity we have. For example, in addition to the constellation, the QuadNet, which are also system managers for Grandmeister, are going to be using some of the capability, and we'll be reaching out to some other groups too. All in the in furtherance of the getting the technology out to the widest variety of people. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell. Mike, back to you.
All right, John, appreciate it. Well, let's expand this out a bit because it's more than just, the thought that you've got 4K transcoding up and running. Let's be more specific and talk about where things are at with it. So, first of all, it's in test mode, I understand, and it's available for beta testing under certain circumstances. It's not being hidden because it's apparently on the dashboards across the Kings of Digital system reflectors. So I understand that you want to open it to other groups, which is down the road. But right now, today, what are you doing with it? And do you need any help in doing whatever it is you're doing with it to get the kinks and the things smoothed out? I mean, you just have had the reflector software for a brief period of time. So in test mode, what do we need to know about? K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, what we're doing is, right now there's a few of us who are linking both to D-Star and DMR, and most of the time those of us involved are linking at the same time so we can monitor ourselves. But we're trying it with different radios, different kinds of hotspots. We want to get an idea of if there are any vulnerabilities, if there's a particular radio or software version, probably maybe more older software versions that are having some issues. We want to identify. We're in a process of wanting to identify that. Most of the time, it works. It works quite well. We could probably use a few additional beta testers, but let me reset first. Once it goes public, we're planning on providing all kinds of information for the newest newbie out there, including the working with some of the hotspot images, incorporating DMR gateway along with MMDVM host, in addition to the OpenSpot. And we definitely will reach out, but at this point, for the beta testers, we really want to focus on people who are kind of experienced users of both D-Star and DMR. So our focus can be, at this point, not working towards looking at the transcoding issues as opposed to, helping out with the people getting up to speed, which is something we definitely will do later. But right now, probably looking for a few experienced beta testers. Is that what you were looking for, Mike? Back to you.
Well, I think so. I mean, the fact that the 4K transcoding is up and running, I presume is not, it's not a secret, but I mean, I just thought those that have interest in this, and the DMR to D-Star, D-Star to DMR transcoding, 4K, the true clear signal transcoding, would be interested in knowing where things are at, because there are those that are looking forward to using it. Just setting aside, the capability of other organizations to get into it later on, but is that the extent of it, that it's in test mode, and you're going to gather up some beta testers and run it to its run it through the ringer and make sure it's clear, and then eventually I presume that it's going to be connected to the constellation here on Module A and operate as we would normally operate, just that we're bringing in DMR full time, and stations can choose how they want to talk here on the X reflectors. So if that's the end of the news, that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to let people know. Now, is there anything? So anyway, I'll hand it back to you, and then we'll see if there are any questions or further comments before we move on. K6KD, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the idea to, not just take something brand new and put it right in the middle of a net or a large constellation, because, as there's several nets that are on the constellation and a lot of people that are listening, and so we want the testing to be initially, a little bit separate, and for the beta testers, we'll provide, all the connection information, how they would modify, the specific changes they would make to the OpenSpot, the MMDVM host with or without DMR gateway, and we'll provide all that information. And then as soon as it becomes, public, then we'll probably make that information, available on two places, both on roundtable.tech, and also for the more general audience, than my XReflector, xrefl.boards.net. That'll have information as well. So, I think, once we make it public, we'll provide all the information, what the master is, what should be programmed, the time slot, all the connection information, the talk groups, and I think also, I guess what I just say, one other comment that's not directly related, but for people that are wanting to get familiar with it, when it becomes public. Let me reset real quick. I would get familiar with the OpenSpot. If you have a DMR radio, use that OpenSpot or MMDVM host, and I think the DMR gateway in particular is going to prove very, very powerful to use the XLX system along with the Brandmeister and DMR Plus. And also that is going to, there's going to be another step forward. Bob W6KD and I had a long chat with Jonathan G4KLX, and it was on this constellation. He was listening. We talked about it, and he's in the process of making some further enhancements to DMR gateway, which will respect the fact that there'll be more XLX DMR masters out there. So I would suggest people get familiar with that if you want to do something in the meantime, just to get kind of a leg up on things. Back to you, Mike.
All right, John. We'll talk about DMR gateway here in a minute, because I think that that is something worth discussing, perhaps as even a separate topic. But for those that are listening tonight for the first time or listening to the podcast and are still unclear or don't know what 4K transcoding is and why it is superior to other attempts to connect DMR to D-Star, and that is the digital modes together, without noticing or knowing that you're on one end or the other. I suppose that those that are keeping a careful eye on a screen might be able to determine something. But anyway, just a real quick overview of what the excitement is about 4K transcoding, if you don't mind, and then we'll move on. Well, actually, what we'll do is we'll take some questions if there aren't any. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, I think maybe one way to look at it is in the broader context, because people sometimes say, well, what's the point of having two modes work together? And we know that there are people that have wanted modes to interact just for the sake of interacting, and sometimes even when they sound pretty lousy. But what it is in this case, relating to the issues with ICOM, the 4K transcoding provides the ability to people to get into D-Star. Because I think the D-Star infrastructure is probably second to none. The XLX, XRF infrastructure, but the radios are kind of expensive, And when you can get a DMR radio that is the Thai TYT MD380 or 390, a little below, in one case a little above $100, that sounds very good. That's enticing, and that provides a way for people to who are already into D-Star to have another way to access. And for the people that are currently on DMR, it provides them a way to get a glance into the D-Star infrastructure. And it gets to the point where it's not a matter of one mode versus the other. It's you look at it in terms of the radios and the infrastructure. And both DMR and D-Star have good infrastructures. I think there's some very powerful features with the XRF XLX infrastructure, but it provides a way for D-Star users to have a much greater variety of radios, and it provides a way for current DMR users to access the D-Star infrastructure. Bigger picture. Back to you.
All right, John, great explanation. All right, stations who have questions about what we're doing with 4K transcoding, or have any questions about what it is, or anything you've heard about it thus far, and then we'll get into DMR Gateway and why it is so important for those with hotspots or access points. Stations, please key up. Alrighty, nothing seen or heard. Well, it doesn't surprise me. You did a good job, John, and we've talked about this for some time now. Let's talk a little bit about DMR Gateway. John broke the news that Jonathan G4KLX is going to work on, and perhaps is working on it as we speak. In fact, I think he had a post in one of the Yahoo groups concerning the upgrades or updates or improvements to D-Star Gateway. But I think it's more important for those that have heard the term DMR Gateway to understand what it is and in what circumstances you would put it to use, and what the advantage is to having that on your hotspot or access point. And I'm just going to call for stations who would like to volunteer to start this off. Please key up.
W6 VK4PU.
I have W6KD and VK4TUX first to W6KD. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Many of us here, I'd say probably most folks here, have probably been exposed to or actually use G4KLX's hotspot software, known as IRC DDB Gateway, which is the D-Star. There are two programs that run together that are oftentimes referred to as IRC DDB Gateway. You actually have the Gateway software, which provides the connection between your hotspot and the internet, and the infrastructure downstream on the internet. And then you have another program called D-Star Repeater, which also runs right there on your Raspberry Pi or other computer device, that actually handles the RF piece of it. It handles the DVAP or the DV Mega, and the connection between your radio and that gateway that's running. So it's sort of a two-piece process. Well, MMDVM, which is also written by G4KLX, we owe that guy a huge debt of gratitude. Can't say that enough. And anyway, MMDVM, the multi-mode digital voice modem, the software is a multi-mode version of what we're used to with IRC DDB Gateway. Let me change hands here. So anyway, it's been through several iterations, and the MMDVM program it incorporates IRC DDB Gateway, as well as another program called YSF Gateway, which is CSU System Fusion Gateway, which is a gateway that will connect to the YSF reflectors. And now there is a DMR gateway, which is the DMR hook or piece of that that gives you the connection out to the out towards the internet for DMR infrastructure. And what's exciting is open source DMR infrastructure. So right now we've got Brandmeister and DMR Plus. And there are a couple of XLX test reflectors that have had standalone DMR capability. But what's coming here is XLX reflectors that are going to present the opportunity to do exactly with DMR what we've been doing with the X reflectors in D-Star for a very long time, which is have our own standalone, easy to deploy, inexpensive infrastructure that anybody can put up. So rather than depending on Brandmeister or on DMR Plus, you can set up your own reflector, and the emerging version of XLX that's coming out now not only does D-Star, but it does DMR, and with the transcoding server that we've been talking about here, it will bridge the two of them together as well. But even without the transcoder, the XLX reflector is a standalone D-Star and a standalone DMR reflector, which allows anybody to set up their own infrastructure and not be dependent, not be beholden to anybody else. And that's a huge, just a major league positive development because, clubs can set up their own infrastructure. You can set up your own infrastructure, for a few dollars a month, you can set it up yourself and just have it out there for fun to play with. So the DMR Gateway program, going back to Jonathan, is the hook to that amazing evolution of standalone reflector infrastructure for DMR now that's very similar to what we already have on the D-Star side. I'm going to change hands one more time. So anyway, the conversation that John and I had with Jonathan was about this evolution and the emergence of what's going to be a proliferating number of DMR masters, which you can think of as being analogous to D-Star reflectors. And in fact, they'll do both. They'll do D-Star and DMR, and many of them will eventually be able to cross over between the two. And Jonathan is working now on a mechanism that will allow DMR users to access XLX standalone DMR reflectors, very similar to what we're doing in D-Star now, to where you can have a host file with maybe 100 or 200 XLX reflectors in it, and be able to access them ad hoc by entering a talk group, a specifically constructed talk group number in your radio, and connect to XLX 950 or XLX 312 or XLX 555, whatever. And then in essence, what you're going to be able to do is from your radio travel around the DMR universe ad hoc the same way we do in D-Star right now. And in fact, you'll be able to go back and forth across between the two of them. And I think it's way cool. And what makes it especially way cool is that it breaks that dependence on expensive established infrastructure. You can put your own inexpensive, easy to operate reflector up for your club, for whoever. Set it up and use it, and no mother may I to anybody. So, we're excited about it. And with that, I will send it back to B6KD.
Bob, thank you. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I concur with everything Bob was saying there. It's quite exciting. The new features coming to, especially with the event of the MMDVM. I run a dual band MMDVM here. I'm using the VHF side of it here now, but I've got two MMDVMs connected to the XU4, and I've run totally separate operations on each band on all four modes, including P25. For P25, I had to run the P25 gateway on a different PC on the network here to give it a different LAN IP to make that work okay. So the traffic came back to the originator device okay. But back to getting back to the subject, I posted a little link on the roundtable, which is a little DTMF guide for the YSF reflectors, and a couple of days ago the code got updated. Now you can just link to the YSF reflectors directly by DTMF control on your MMDVM system. Before we had to use the WiseX system and bring up a list and then scroll through the list and find the one you wanted to connect to, and you know, it's fairly arduous. A lot of people used to have trouble with it. I had it down okay here, but it was confusing for a lot of people. But the DTMF system, as we know in D-Star, works so well, also is available for the YSF reflectors for those using that in the MMDVM system. So I just made up a little guide for it that shows the hash DTMF code also correlating to the YSF reflector if it's useful for anybody there. I just did a little bit of sed scripting on the host file to separate it out and make it easy to work that out for anyone wanting to use that feature. And also, you know, I've been involved with a conversation with Artem from Brandmeister. I think Brandmeister actually a little bit on the act with Luke and what's going on later on. I think as far as connecting via some of the intellects with possibly a Brandmeister talk correlating to it and connecting. So I think they're in communication with each other, Brandmeister and XLX, on some sort of interaction between the two. Not yet, but down the road, I think they're waiting for some protocol to be written that's going to be suitable for it by Luke, and that's coming later on. So it's sort of Brandmeister sort of, I think, tends to be a part of it rather than anything in opposition. And Brandmeister's actually been fantastic for the DMR world. It's given us a great system. They do take donations and etc. As you expect. They do have infrastructure costs, and a lot of people will help them out. And a lot of us here run the servers to help support it as well, and everything. It's been fantastic for the DMR world, and I think it'll always be very popular as its own thing. I don't think XLX reflectors will replace it, but I think they'll work alongside each other, and there'll be interconnection between the two. So that's the way I see it happening now. But it's all great news. Back to net control, VK4TUX7.
Indeed, it's exciting news, and you know, for groups such as this that support open source and only open source systems or open digital modes, it is just too cool. Using Bob's words. All right, stations, please, Kia.
KC8RFE.
KC8RFE, welcome to the roundtable. Go ahead. I've got KC8RFE. It looks like probably Kevin. If your key up was inadvertent, it's no big to do. Just let me know. We all do that from time to time where you key up. Of course, if your device keyed up by itself and you weren't near it, you might make note of that as well, so we can keep track of those that do that. So far, it's been primarily the DV4 minis, but otherwise, hate to not have you participate. KC8RFE, go ahead. All right, nothing heard. If you're having a difficult time getting in or some device problem, just key back up. We try to leave a lot of space between transmissions to avoid quick keying and tailgating, which is never acceptable and a bad practice in any digital mode. All right, stations who wish to add to the discussion, let's take you now, and then we'll open it for questions if there are any. Stations, please key up.
W6KD.
W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, well, to piggyback on some things Adrian said there, I think he's probably right that some interaction between Brandmeister, which has been a good thing. I mean, when you consider that the DMR universe started out as DMR Mark, the Motorola Amateur Radio Club. It was pure Motorola radios and infrastructure, and very autocratic, very restrictive in who could connect what and who could talk where, and it was really the antithesis of what I'm talking about here with regards to the freedom to set up and structure your own infrastructure. So Brandmeister came along and provided an outstanding alternative to that. But Brandmeister has grown very large, global in fact. And in the United States here, we have 4 master servers. 3 of the 4 have been acquired by a single person or small group of people, with one, and then they've attempted to buy the 4th one as well. And so there's a consolidation and some control being exerted now by that group on who can do what. They're clamping down on the creation of new talk groups, and it's not oppressive. I'm not implying that, but it's not the same kind of freedom as being able to get a free piece of software and a $6 a month VPS server account and set up your own reflector that'll run both D-Star and DMR. So where they touch, where they interact with each other, I think will be a great thing. But for a lot of people, they either don't want that or they don't care about that, and this will be an outstanding development and extension of the mode as well. So yeah, it's all good. But I'm not disparaging Brandmeister. Don't take me that way. I think they've done some very good things, but there are some things you can do setting up your own infrastructure that you can't do on Brandmeister or anywhere else. And so it's important, and it's a good thing. You have the absolute best range of options under those conditions. Set it up for yourself. Do it your way. Or if you're not interested in that, you can ride along with Brandmeister, and they have an outstanding, enormous system reset. Or, as Adrian points out, some mixture of the two, where the two interact, where there are bridges between the two. Where there are already bridges between Brandmeister and Yaesu Fusion, for example, and I think even a couple between D-Star and DMR using, I think, software-based attempts to transcode. Anyway, so yeah, it's the great convergence is here upon us. Lots of options evolving in front of us, and the cool thing about it is that they're fairly simple. They're very inexpensive, and for anybody inclined, you can tinker with this to your heart's content without breaking the bank, and probably learn a lot in the process too. I know I do every day. Back to that, 36KD.
VK4TUX.
VK4TUX, go ahead.
I guess I'm Mike, and thanks for that, Bob. But I've been a little bit sort of curious on what's going on in the USA and Brandmeister myself. I thought it was a little bit odd. Maybe a little bit too much control coming in, and I think they were dropping the TAC 1, the TAC 9 tour groups, etc. I read the other day, and I don't see the reason for it. People are able to actually connect to other worldwide servers to access those systems. I don't know why they should have to, but I can tell you that anyone getting out of line, running those servers, even though they may own the server infrastructure, It's still all very dependent on the administration in Russia and Europe. And there's like a handshake that happens where the master system looks at the IP address, which has to be recognised, and also there's security keys on the servers as well. There's a situation in France where the guys running the French server were playing up and exerting who could access it and etc. And it came to the attention of the main administrators. They just took the server off them, and they just did it by disconnecting it. And they can make the server ineffective and useless with one little change.
Everyone stand by until I hit keys. VK4TUX and 6HKH. All right, well, as everybody knows, if you timed out or otherwise have internet trouble, you won't know until you unkey and you don't hear anything, and then usually the station will key back up and say, where did I leave off? We're waiting for that to happen with Adrian so he can finish his discussion. Please stand by. You know, it appears that Adrian may have had an internet connection interruption, and so we're going to continue on because I'm not certain he timed out, and we will, of course, pick him back up once he's able to reestablish connection here. Sometimes you have too much going on in your shack and not enough bandwidth. Things happen. All right, stations who wish to add to this discussion concerning DMR Gateway, and especially in light of its use with MMDVM, as well as the features that are soon to be written in by G4KLX, we'll take you now. Please key up.
K6KD.
K6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to kind of supplement what I first want to do is turn down the radio, so like echo. I want to supplement what Bob said about the DMR gateway, but on a little bit more of a microscopic level, and discuss the three things. One is what MMDVM-based hotspots do today, what it does with DMR, adding DMR gateway today, and then DMR gateway tomorrow. With MMDVM, the images with MMDVM, you can specify one DMR master server, either an XLX master server, a Brandmeister master server, or a DMR Plus master server. And if you want to change, people often have multiple hotspots, but if you want to do it within one hotspot and change, you got to go to a lot of trouble of changing an initialization file and restarting the service, which is a real nuisance. That's with MMDVM just by itself. You know, only one DMR master at a time. Okay, you add DMR gateway, and you can simultaneously have two DMR masters, legacy DMR, DMR Plus, and Brandmeister, and also two XLX reflectors, or XLX masters, or reflectors, I guess. And that's a big step forward. What it also does by having multiple DMR masters is it does a remapping of talk groups so that the talk groups of one don't consist. You can deconflict talk groups that might be used on both systems. You can remap them. And that's a very important feature. So that allows for a total of 4 systems, DMR Plus, Brandmeister, and 2 XLXs. So the next step forward, and that's what exists today. The next step forward is, as Bob mentioned, instead of being limited to 2 XLX systems, you'll be able to select, say from a host file with many, and without just being limited to 2. And Jonathan was aware of the situation when he did the DMR gateway as it is today, but there weren't many XLX reflectors around with DMR capability, so it wasn't a priority. But anyway, DMR gateway will be keeping up. So anyway, just wanted to cover that. Back to you.
All right, John, appreciate it. Stations who wish to provide further comment about some of these DMR Gateway open source initiatives, please key up.
VK.
Well, there's Adrian. Hey, Adrian, we lost you, and I'm not sure if it was a completely dropped signal, but boy, you went away fast. Hopefully you're with us. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Yeah, fine, Mike. I don't know what happened there, but I finished my over, and you were calling someone else in, so I knew I must have lost it there somewhere. But basically, the summary of the last over was basically that the Brandmeister server owners can't just do what they like and sort of get away with it there. So there is some security provisions in IP control to handshake back from the main system, and the Brandmeister chiefs can drop a server off the system quite easily if it's not playing the game correctly. So just to comment on that. I think with the XLX, if it goes ahead, on top of what John's saying, K6KD is with many many systems that providing a DMR reflector on those XLX reflector systems. I can see that an XLX gateway style system will need to be built with again some sort of either DTMF or link control from the DMR radio, some sort of possibly a reflector numbering, rather than just saying go for 950, might have to be extended to actually control the reflector, then the module in one process, rather than just linking to one reflector and then selecting the module you want. So it'll probably go further and actually select the reflector as well, and I'm sure that's all possible with Jonathan's amazing code abilities. So I think something like the XLX gateway, possibly built into DMR gateway, but a feature of being able to link to the XLX reflector through DTMF, not DTMF control, through talk group 9/2 private call, manual dial control, same as we do now, say for Module E on 950, which is just, under the XLX DMR gateway, we just select 4005 reflector to link to Module E. 4001 is Alpha, 4026 is Zulu. So it correlates Alpha to Zulu with the 26 reflector numbers from 4001 to 4026. So I think what you'll have to do probably later on is do something else with that prefix on there that maybe work out to the XLX reflector itself or something like that, where once you run DMR gateway, you can key up a manual dial on your DMR radio, which will select the reflector and also the module you're on. That's my forecast. I'll be surprised if that doesn't happen later on. So we'll see what happens. Back to net control, VK4TUX.
K6.
Thank you, Adrian. K6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Adrian, I wanted to mention, I think that is pretty close to what Jonathan is going to be providing. It's not on the GitHub master, but because it needs more testing. Now, not with DTMF, but with manual dial of talk groups. I think one of the issues we were talking about the other day is that I don't believe DTMF is a native capability of DMR, and some of the DMR radios that have keypad and even offer DTMF just provide DTMF on analog. So, I'm thinking that the manual entry from the keypad will actually be, selecting a talk group the way a lot of the DMR radios currently operate. And then you'll be able to do exactly that. Select, from a host file, which is automatically downloaded, say via cron job. Select the reflector, select the module, and connect. So, I think it's all. I think it'll be here sooner than we think. Back to Nick.
VK4TU.
VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, John. I'm not sure if I dropped out on the last over there, but I did mention DTMF and I quickly corrected myself. I did say manual dial, and I talked about the manual dial, the reflector numbers, existing being 4001 to 4026 being Alpha to Zulu on XLX 950. So I did mention the manual dial procedure, etc. So I'm not sure I guess none of that came through. So I must have dropped out again. I'm not sure, but I did mention all that. But that's correct. DTMF is not relevant to DMR. I'm probably still thinking about the DTMF on the YSF gateway when I bit of a slip of the tongue there, but I did correct myself on that one. And of course, it's manual dial, or people can program them as a private call in their channels as a private call contact. Okay, thanks for that. Net control, VK4TUX.
Alrighty, stations with questions concerning what you've heard just now about DMR Gateway, both its present status and what we look forward to seeing here fairly soon in conjunction with MMDVM. Questions? Please key up. Nothing seen or heard. I did get a question from a station by email, and he was referring to W6KD's initial presentation when we first called DMR Gateway as a topic, and he said he heard the last part of Bob's discussion about the new design of reflectors and how easy it will be to make one, and he's asking if anyone can point him in the right direction on finding information about how to build reflectors and process. So I'm going to see if W6KD can respond to that, as both to the new design that he envisions, as well as maybe just, I know there's some great information that W6KD has posted here and there about reflectors in general, not specifically the DMR XLX and the related reflectors that will be coming along at hopefully a brisk pace. So W6KD, can you help me on this one? Go ahead.
Okay, Mike. The stuff that's imminent, right around the corner, almost upon us, isn't available for general distribution yet. And when it is, I'll probably have information on my. I have a support forum that's oriented mostly towards D-Star Commander, but I also post general topics for D-Star and digital voice modes at w6kd.boards.net. And anybody who's interested in setting up, for example, an XLX reflector in its current incarnation can go to the Yahoo group XLXD-D-Star. And folks that are interested in setting up a X reflector can go to the Amateur Radio Experimenters Corner, which is another Yahoo group. And a little Google foo will lead you there. I don't have it's at groups.yahoo.com. XLXD-D-Star is the XLX group, and the Amateur Radio Experimenters Corner is the other. Just do a search in the Google Groups webpage, and you'll find it there. So that's the go-to place for the currently available stuff, and the breaking software is well, more on that soon to follow. W680.
K6K.
Thank you, Bob. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, first on the XLX, is the Yahoo group for that is XLXD-star. There's not two Ds, just XLXD-star. And if you go to the files area, there are some instructions on installing for both Debian and CentOS. For the I can just give the Amateur Radio Experimenters Corner. Yeah, the specific place you would go there is, also in the files area. And then there's a folder, and the folder is called DXRFD 3.08A. And that has all the software and instructions for the XRF. Back to you, Mike.
Great, John. Appreciate pointing us to the right place. Stations with questions or comments, please key up. All right, didn't get anything in that. Anyone wish to make further comment or contribution concerning open source initiatives? Please key up. All right, nothing there. So, I thought we'd spend some time talking about MMDVM repeaters and see if because there seems to be both some confusion, controversy, as well as applause in support of them. They're up in many locations. There's been some concerns expressed about how to operate MMDVM repeaters, and we spent time, although not a lot, describing them generally. We've really spent zero time on how to operate, that is, the best practices for multi-mode gateways and repeaters. And I want to see if there are stations that wish to help us out on solving this, and we'll take key ups now on MMDVM repeaters. Please key up.
WB5EKU.
WB5EKU. I'm glad you keyed up. I was just about to call on you, but there you are. Go ahead.
N6HKH in the net, WB5EKU. Yeah, good evening, Mike. I wanted to see if anybody else wanted to key up first. Okay, I don't know if a lot of people have known this, but I've been publicizing it on the net. For almost a year now, I've had a wide area coverage for MMDVM multi-mode repeater in the Los Angeles area. It's sitting on top of a almost 4,000-foot mountain in Los Angeles, and it has a tremendous footprint. It sees Ventura County, it sees all of Los Angeles County, it sees down into Orange County, and it areas in San Bernardino, and who knows where. But it has a very, very unique footprint. I put it up as an experiment. Experimentation is a big part of amateur radio for me. Digital voice, I love it. It's great. It's the way to operate. It interlinks. And when Jonathan wrote the MMDVM code, and I was looking at it and looking at setting up a repeater, we set up a repeater. Adrian VK4 helped install the software. We installed the hardware up on Oat Mountain. It's on Oat Mountain. Let me reset. If you're interested, I have some information on www.k6puw.com. It's a repeater's website. It does DMR, it does Fusion C4FM, it does D-Star, of course. I'm on it right now, and it does P25. P25 by far has the least amount of activity, although it is gaining a little bit of traction in the United States, and I think a little bit in Europe too. But by far, it has the least amount of traffic, especially compared to D-Star, DMR, and Fusion. There have been some reports of some problems. There have been some because of the fact that it is multi-mode. It does not transcode on its own. Meaning, you go in D-Star, you come out D-Star. You go in DMR, you come out DMR. You go in Fusion, you come out Fusion. You go in P25, you come out P25. You do not cross mode between them. Well, yeah, until we get to transcoders, but that's a whole other story. If someone is using DMR, you cannot access D-Star on the repeater. If someone is using Fusion, you cannot access. You get the gist of it. But you can have 4 modes up on the same mountaintop. There are times when there's a lot of activity. There are times when there's little activity. Reset again. I know there's been some controversy as whether, well, it's not good to have other modes on because you don't know who's on what. Well, I've got answers for that too. And that goes back to the very beginnings of amateur radio and the very beginnings of your amateur radio experience. One of the first operating practices you should learn, besides courtesy, by the way, is you look and listen before you transmit. You're going to hear 1,000 different scenarios saying that, oh this, oh that, it's wrong, but it's not. If you look and you see the repeater is in use, then you can check your S meter. You don't hear anything. You turn up your volume, you still don't hear anything. Somebody's on another mode. You wait till the other mode is clear, and then you transmit. It serves a good purpose because on a mountaintop you have 4 modes instead of having 4 separate repeaters. In an area like Los Angeles, reset again. In an area like Los Angeles that is very congested with repeaters, the geography of the area with all of the mountaintops and the valleys and all, there's just very few open frequencies and channels for repeaters. Turbina's UHF especially. Both jammed, so I think it makes a fair amount of sense. I know there's some naysayers, and I know there's some people that have other comments about it. My flame suit is on, Mike, so I just wanted to give that little tutorial about MMDVM multi-mode repeaters. N6HKH, WB5EKU, Granada Hills.
VK4.
VK4TUX recognized. Well, Don, that's what I was looking for. And I'm not here to set anybody on fire. But in looking at it from the repeater standpoint, so all the modes are available and listening for the appropriate digital transmissions. How does the repeater know? And is it automatic? Do you have to tone it or yell at it or signal it, the repeater that is, the MMDVM repeater, in some way to let it know that, hey, you've got DMR coming your way, or is it just automatic? And then, secondly for you, Don, how does the repeater make sure that someone doesn't slip in the long-standing practice of no tailgating or quick keying? How does it protect itself? Let's say you're in DMR, and somebody keys up on P25 in the middle of a let's say a QSO, where a break is being taken, and the stations politely wait to see if anybody's going to key up on that mode. So how does it protect itself from letting the other second mode, let's say D-Star, from getting in the middle of it? And how long of a wait is there? That sort of thing is an explanation I'm looking for. And if you can answer that, then I'll give you a break and we'll go pick up Adrian, and then we'll talk a little bit about best user practices. WB5EKU, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I mean, short of having 4 people sitting up at the mountaintop site all listening to each different mode, that was a joke, by the way. It automatically, the repeater is always listening. And if I key up on D-Star, there are a couple of parameters that are set in the initialization file that determine how long a mode is going to be listened for. If those parameters have been exceeded, it will listen for all of them. If it's open and I key up D-Star, it will automatically go to D-Star. If I key up DMR, it will automatically go to DMR. Likewise with the other two. There is a parameter called hang time and mode time that determine how long a mode stays active for. I have it set right now on this repeater on K6PUW for 10 seconds. I'll have to go back and check that. It's either 10 or 20 seconds. I had it set and I changed it. I have to go back and look at it. Reset here. Yeah, I have to check that. But if you and I are having a QSO in D-Star and we do not exceed the hang time in the mode hang time, it will stay in D-Star no matter what comes in anywhere else. Even if someone comes in D-Star, it will not shift until the mode time expires. So that is a settable parameter. One thing I do for the roundtable is I automatically set K6PUW in a D-Star only mode. I have that capability to set it in enable whatever modes I want. It normally runs all 4 modes enabled. But for the duration of the roundtable, I set it as a D-Star only mode, so just in case. But I do have to tell you, Mike, I don't think you've taken a breath in all the years of listening to the net. I don't think you've taken a breath for over 10 seconds. Hi. N6HKH, WB5KU. I hope I've answered all your questions.
Well, I think so, and there may be more. Let's next go to VK4TUX. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Well, the repeater only listens for all the mode recognition when it's in idle mode, and it will just decipher which of the 4 modes that are enabled that it hears, and then fix the system in that mode for the QSO for the period of either the mode hang or the RF mode hang and the net mode hang used together. You can use one or the other two. I just use the mode hang only and comment out the other two. I put a link on the roundtable to my live desktop here, which I'm talking of at the moment. You'll see the activity on the bottom left, which is the VHF MMDVM. The bottom center is the UHF, and all the gateways are there on top of each other on the right-hand side because there's not enough room on the desktop. I've brought up a little thing on the bottom. You can see all the links to each of the GUIs of the different gateways running with all the stuff, including DMR gateway. So I use a mode hang of 10, which means once it's activated, it holds that mode for 10 seconds. And especially in DMR, that's important to keep the radio and TX mode right through. I'll just rekey. Just right through the period between the overs. You don't want the radio unkeying during the period between the overs. You want to keep it in TX, and an MMDVM repeater on a full repeater in DMR could stay transmitting for 10 or 20 minutes solid without dropping. It's in DMR usage. That's quite normal, and without any breaks. That's why they need to have a high 100% duty cycle on the radios they use for these things. But that's the best way to play it. And then if you for the user of the repeater, they'll see the radio key up on D-Star. They won't hear any audio. In any break they can see, they can try and key it up. Using info, if they don't get a return, they can only assume that it's on another mode. They can use their phone or some other internet device to check the dashboard to see what's going on, and that's probably the easiest way to tell. On DMR, they could key up, they can go to the manual dial on Talk Group 9 slot 2 and try 5000 to look for some sort of response or an info on the reflector link status. And again, if they don't get a response there, it may be in a different mode again. It may be on C4FM or P25 or D-Star. So really, the best way to tell is just to use your mobile phone with the internet and have a look at the dashboard and see what's going on. There's really no way to really easily tell apart from that. But you can only guess that it's used by something else on the other methods I described. So a little bit of a quandrum in that respect. But that's just the way it is with multi-mode. And as Bob said previously, you can just use it for one mode only and use different devices for different modes if you like. So you've got that, all those options are available to use it in the way you wish. I use mine in all 4 modes on each of the 2 bands, but I don't have any issues here. But I mainly use it for my own use, so it's not too much of a problem for me. But I can understand how it could be for a public repeater sort of thing. Back to net control, VK4TUX.
All righty. Well, so from the user standpoint, I understand that you can chunk, so to speak, an MMDVM repeater without harm. You're not going to interfere, and you're going to be listening for a response, which I guess would be the Roger beep or some other drop of the repeater had you keyed it up. And without that, that's a good indication the repeater may be tied up on a mode other than the one that you're presently wishing to use it with. But let's take certainly if you can have something such as your cell phone, as you said, Adrian, to look at the dashboard, I got that. But let's take the most inconvenient situation for the station user. You're in your car and you're on your mobile, and you want to keep your eyes on the road, and let's just say you got too much other stuff going on. Is there an indication on the radio's face that, I mean, if somebody's talking in a mode other than the mode you're intending to use the repeater for, is the S meter full deflect at 10 or 11, assuming that you're in the footprint of the repeater? Is there some other indication that digital radios are capable of displaying, or maybe even audible, that you're on you want to get into this MMDVM repeater, and you're going to have to wait. And I'll call for stations to key up to help us understand that. Stations, please key up.
WB5EK.
I have VK4TUX and WB5EKU. We'll take them in that order. Back to you again, Adrian. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Michael. As I was saying before, when the repeater's transmitting, you normally, most radios will indicate they're receiving something. Even if they're not hearing the audio, you don't hear any audio from the radio, and that's a good indication. It's not the mode you're listening to. It's on some other mode, but it'll still receive the transmission. On the D-Star radio, you'll still see the little receive LED light up, and same on the DMR radio. When there's a transmission on the frequency, you'll see the little green LED flicker. B25, same thing. if you're not hearing it on the radio that it's receiving on, there's a good chance that mode's not active. Otherwise, someone's keying up with no audio input. As I said, if there's no RF activity, you can use something like an info 7-space India on D-Star to see if you get an audio response. 5000 manual link command, manual dial command on DMR to see if you get an audio response on that, and that's really all you can do. So the other thing is when I'm mobile, I've got 3 modes in the car. I've got a P25, D-Star, and DMR radio in the car, all on the same repeater frequency, and the one I hear it on is the mode it's on. So probably the answer, Mike, is waiting for someone to invent, which is like a quad mode HT that does all 4 modes, and I'm sure it'll happen one day. It's only going to be a matter of time, especially with the MMDVM out now. It's someone's going to be trying hard to come up with a device that does. There's already devices out there that can do a couple of modes, but we need to have something to do 3 or 4. I think that can sit on one frequency and it probably automatically switch to the frequency to the mode that's coming in, and correlate to what's happening on the MMDVM. So that's something yet to be invented, but I think that's the answer. I don't think there's much else you can do apart from what I've described. Back to net control, VK4TUX.
KA3TJ, I recognize. WB5EKU, go ahead.
From my original transmission, like I had said, you want to look at the channel to make sure the channel's clear. And I don't care what mode you're in. I mean, if you've got HF in your car, you're going to be tuning around. You're going to want to make sure the channel's clear. If you do see that there's some indication, and it's only a glance. You only take a glance at the radio to see if your S meter is deflected or not. If you see a signal and you don't hear it, and you're in a mode, well, it's not that mode. If you have more than one radio, like Adrian does in his car, I only have one in mine right now. I only have D-Star in mine. I have to find a way to put others in there. But if you're going to do that, then you have to have some indication of which radio is walking at you, so you can grab the correct microphone. Now, a lot of us would like to have that problem, but I think it goes back to very basic. Look, listen before you transmit. I mean, I think that's the epitome of it. Just go back and just look and listen, and instead of just picking up a microphone, grabbing it, and keying down. Is it the most ideal situation? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's ideal because of what it does. It puts 4 modes on a single mount top, and it spreads the load. So things are coming that are going to be changing that. And who knows? We might have radios that auto detect the mode reset. When that happens, all the arguments are moved. So, okay, I still have my flying suit on. So, NCHKH, WB5KU.
W6K.
Well, I don't think anybody's gotten out the blowtorch or the flamethrower yet, but yeah, you should always have that, flame retardant suit always or overall on standby. W6KD recognized. First, we welcome KA3TJI. Go ahead. I got a Kia from KA3TJI, and as before, if it was inadvertent, accidental, we all do it, no big deal. Just let me know, and I'll take you off the list. It's no embarrassment. But I hate to, as you guys know, pass up a station that wants to participate in the roundtable, so we'll give it another shot. KA3TJI, go ahead. No response. W6KD, your turn.
Okay, doke. Well, I got my oxyacetylene torch turned on here, so no. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution. I mean, that's pretty much true everywhere and anywhere. But I have a couple of DMR radios that don't have S meters on them. So the idea that I could monitor to see if somebody was somehow transmitting on D-Star or on Fusion is probably it's not something I can do with those radios because they just flat don't have those features on the display. They're very basic in terms of their presentation on the front side. Excuse me. Anyway, so if you have a very sparse user base, or if most of your users are on one mode or the other, it'll probably work just fine. I can say, if I were, a paying member of a repeater association, and I had a D-Star radio in my car, and every time I wanted to use the repeater, it was being used in another mode, I would be frustrated rather quickly. But if I'm, if those other modes are in use either at a different time than I would be using it, or there's just a couple other, anyway, it's gonna completely depend on the mix of users and frankly on the training of the user base to understand, how the system works, and the fact that the mode that you're using may not be available when you want it. If that's acceptable to you, if that's not a problem, then it won't be a problem. If you expect to be able to turn your radio on and use the repeater, and most of the time or enough of the time it's not available, then that's going to be a problem. So for anybody contemplating putting one of these systems up, that's the kind of balance, the considerations you need to take into account. And only you can decide, you and your users can decide what that right balance is. For some people, it works great. For me, I'm kind of on the free agent end of the spectrum. That's why I use hotspots. I want what I want when I want right now, and with a hotspot, I get that 100% of the time. Well, 99% of the time. Reset. So that's the trade-off. You have 4 modes on the mountaintop, but only one at a time. And if you have, groups of people that are competing with each other and banging heads, it's not going to go well. But if you got a group of people that, if you got what seems to be the classic repeater these days, which is it sits up there and it works at about 2.5% duty cycle. In other words, it's silent most of the time, and 20 minutes a day it's being used, then you'd be fine. But you have to take all that into account. And there is no pat right answer for everybody. For some people, a multi-mode system works great, and in some scenarios, it would present a real bone of contention, I think, in a club. So, do your due diligence ahead of time and go with God. Anyway, back to that W6 Kitty.
Okay, Bob, appreciate it. We had a double between WB5EKU and VK4TOX. We'll give it first to Don, WB5EKU. Adrian, stand by. Go ahead, Don.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. You didn't have the heat up too much on the torch there. It's still pretty cool inside the suit here. Yeah, okay. Hey, but I gotta tell you, I've been in repeater groups where you only have one mode, be it analog or a digital mode or whatever, where you only have one mode, where you get some, well, some people call them rag chewers, some people call them ratchet jaws, where they sit there and they talk for long periods of time, and you can't use the system anyway. So you're right, Bob. It just depends upon the users and what they expect out of a repeater, and you have to instruct everybody. This is what it's going to be and how it's going to be. I did it for experimental purposes. It's great. Rarely have I gotten any complaints. And I've got all kind of contact information, and I monitor quite a bit. So rarely have I gotten any complaints. And the only complaints I got were they just didn't understand one or two things. So, but it's gonna stay up as long as I can keep it up there. Anyway, Bob, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Back to you, Mike. N6HKH, WB5EKU, Granada Hills.
K6KD recognized. First to VK4TUX.
Thanks, Mike, on that VK4TUX. As Bob indicated, the freedom is there to set up the MMDVM whichever way you like. You've got total freedom on the options you use on it. And if you had a club repeater, you probably have a club meeting and say to the guys, well, who likes using D-Star and what time of day do you normally use it? The guys might say, well, we all like talking to each other on D-Star on our way to work in the morning. We normally have a bit of a get together and talk on our way to work. The DMR guys say we like sort of doing a bit of DMR when we get home from work. So you might come to some sort of understanding amongst the club members, and what you can do is set up the MMDVM on a cron tab. So say in the morning between 6 and 8, it does D-Star only, and that's it. It's just on D-Star only, and it may link to a certain reflector that you want to link to at the time. Then after that time, it goes into full multi-mode on whichever spreader modes that you like then. And normally in multi-mode, it doesn't always pay to stay linked to a particular D-Star reflector or to have a certain DMR talk group static. You tend to take those talk groups off static and have an automatic unlink on a reflector every 20 minutes or so. So it keeps the system free for what happens next. And then in the afternoon, you can set it up for DMR only from, say, 8 to 10 at night or something like that. And so you can reach an agreement that way. So it suits everybody. So in between times, it's just safe and slather. But it's not a good idea a D-Star reflector completely linked up solid or a talk group on DMR, especially an active talk group, static all the time. And all those things are able to be controlled. They can control VK4TUX.
Well, of course, that is a great approach, and the configuration capability administratively for MMDVM repeaters is fairly extensive, and you can time it as you described, Adrian. But and I'll ask you this question. If not, I'll take and K6KD, just stand by. How would a user know that they wandered into a MMDVM repeater? I understand the users, being approached by the administrator or repeater system owner of the parameters of the MMDVM repeater. Can you guys work with it? What would be the best way to do? Should I just put it up because it's cheaper and just lock it out on D-Star? Or And how do you want to go about it? That, of course, is the best way to go. It avoids confusion so long as you get the word out. But let's say you're running your dog along the beach with an HT and throwing sticks. Maybe you got a cup of coffee in one hand, and who knows what's going on. And you programmed your radio for repeaters in the area, or you're traveling, whatever. How do you know it's not a standard single mode repeater, but instead you're now facing an MMDVM repeater? Adrian, I'll pose that to you if you care to answer it, VK4TUX.
Okay, Mike and Annette. Well, when anybody programs their radio, the source they get that information from should mention that particular frequency and repeater as an MMDVM repeater in that list. It should show that it's this is a MMDVM repeater, and maybe mention all the modes it uses. Most DMR radios indicate, even though they haven't got an S meter, normally have a little LED that flickers. Normally on a Motorola, it's normally a little green LED that just blinks on and off, indicating RF activity on that frequency. So you probably know there's something going on there on that particular frequency, but you can't hear anything, so you can only assume there's something going on, but it's not on your mode. And especially on a DMR radio, it may be DMR activity, but it's just not on the talk group you're listening on as well. So it's hard to tell, and you just really can't. The only way you'd know is just to have a bit more inside information on the system you're accessing and how it works, and just like a lot of us have to do, is send emails and reach the SysOp or someone that knows about that repeater and say, well, what's the setup on this system? How does it work? And they might send you back a schedule. Oh, this is how we have it. It's on this mode at certain times of the day, or it does this, or these are the modes that are enabled. And you just have to work with that. But it's a bit of an unknown quantity, and I don't think there's any real answer to knowing 100% at any time what's going on in the system. It's a little bit of trial and error in the procedure. But for someone that's just changed to the frequency, and they really are going to stay in the dark unless they hear some audio. So that's pretty well the way it is. Back to net control, VK4TUX.
Fair enough. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, good evening again, Mike. I think if there's a schedule published that people know about, just as Adrian was discussing, that can alleviate a lot of confusion. And it's also possible if you happen to have a group of people that are Yaesu operators during the morning commute, and you happen to have a bunch of people who are DMR operators during the evening commute, and it becomes pretty much known, that could work as well. And again, as Bob mentioned, if you have a repeater that is very sparsely used, it probably doesn't matter. But if you have a repeater that is fairly active and doesn't have either a fixed schedule or a pattern, I think it can be very frustrating from the user's point of view. And that gets into something that a lot of us who have worked on all kinds of systems over the years, human factors is an important thing. Imagine two scenarios. And this is especially when you're driving, but even if you're not driving, and let's assume you don't have a dashboard in front of you. Okay, if you can hear, if it's on a mode that you know it's on, you turn on the radio and you hear there's a conversation going, and you have a choice to break in, or you can listen to it, or at least you can be going on doing what you're doing without having to constantly look at the radio because you hear the audio. Under the situation that Don described, look and listen, look and listen, look and listen. If you think that would be a convenient thing, especially when you're driving, to constantly look, I think it would be extremely frustrating to always have to not be able to hear what's going on, which is kind of frustrating in and of itself, and having to continually look to see, even if the radio does display an incoming signal, Bob mentioned some don't, but assuming it does, I think to constantly have to look is a very annoying thing. And from a human factors point of view, I just wouldn't find that acceptable. I would use a hotspot or go to a different repeater, if I could. I think the people that are most, and this isn't a knock or anything, but I think the people who are most forgiving of an obvious human factor shortfall are people that really like the technology. And I think what works on a hotspot, because you control the hotspot, you set the policies of the hotspot. If you're going to monitor, or you're in control. But a repeater that is ad hoc mode on demand, I think from a human factors point of view, leaves a whole lot to be desired. And when you're driving, I think there's even a safety issue having to constantly look at the radio to see when it's almost as bad as texting. So the point is you probably shouldn't look too often. Well, I think I timed out. No, I think it can be as distractive. You have to constantly look when you can't listen. I think is when you're driving is as distracting as texting. So anyway, back to that.
WE5E.
Well, the choice, of course, is yours, and there's a lot of cars that have a lot of busy dashboards and radios and all kinds of things going on, and you just scan them. But then, it is different between a mounted mobile, where you know where it's at, and you can just scan it along with everything else going on while you're driving. As amateur radio operators, we're generally bored just sitting in a car and driving. I mean, that's one reason why we're in this hobby, to give us something more to do to occupy our time. But your concerns are understandable, and it would be interesting to ask, let's say, a group of MMDVM repeater operators, administrators, have you had complaints, and how did you deal with them? What has your user base reported in their experience with it? And that would be interesting to find out. I don't think I've read a survey or seen an article that has canvassed owners to see what the impact is of both good and bad of MMDVM. I mean, there's an obvious advantage, multi-mode, but it comes with some downsides. And of course, that's why we're having this interesting discussion. WB5EKU, go ahead.
Well, you know what? I can come up with thousands of scenarios. I can sit here and take the net till 5 o'clock in the morning with scenarios in both directions. So, yeah, John, you're right. It is. Look around when you're driving. I guarantee you that glancing every now and then down at if your radio is down, some of them are up on dashboards where you can see them easily. If that is almost, and I think you said almost as bad as texting, you better look around when you drive next time, or just walking in the street, because a lot more people are spending a lot more time looking at their phones, either in their lap or on their steering wheel, than actually driving, including on the freeway. So, okay. I had a hotspot. I was driving back from Las Vegas. I had a hotspot. My telephone provides internet service, and it was working well. The telephone dropped internet at a certain point. I did not know that. I could not find out. I look around. I couldn't find out anywhere where I had no service. I didn't know why my radio didn't work. You can come up with a million scenarios. I'm sorry. The basic premise of amateur radio is look or listen before you transmit. And you cannot convince me any other thing. That's what you're supposed to learn from the very beginning. That plus the fact that you be very... So, okay, Mike, I have not heard... Let me reset here. I have not heard of any data available from what you were asking about. And by the way, I've been running repeater since the very early 1980s. So you know, call me a newbie, I guess. Started off in analog. I actually started off in packet before I actually got to analog, but that's a different story. Anyway, I have not heard any data what you were asking about if there has been any, any complaints. I would love to find out if there is an area that has that, but where the database would be located. N6HKH WB5EKU.
N V W6KBM.
I have NR5G, VK4TUX, and W6KD. Well, ultimately, Don, if you own the repeater pair, you get to decide. And if users are confused, unless you have a group of dues-paying users who are unhappy with it, that, of course, is different. But it's an unknown, I think, at this time, whether MMDVM repeaters turn off. That's a bad phrase. Whether users of MMDVM repeaters are discouraged for the reasons that we've heard from the user standpoint, or if they think it's a great thing and like the idea of being able to, of course, again, you're only talking on one mode at a time, no transcoding or anything else, but, I can see the excitement of it too, but it's just maybe it's too soon to assume anything yet. All right, let's go down the list. NR5G, welcome. Go ahead. I've got NR5G up on the board, and hopefully this was not an inadvertent or unwelcome transmission in a sense from your standpoint. NR5G, go ahead. Okay, no response. And as always, if you keyed up and I got you, but you can't get in now because the dog is running away with the mic cord, just key up because we always pause. We'll get you in again. VK4TUX, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, just back to what we were saying too, is probably the only real way to to be able to monitor the MMDVM repeaters, have a mode in front of you, a radio on the mode that covers every mode that the MMDVM is dealing with. So probably why I've got numerous HTs sitting on my dashboard and 3 or 4 radios in the car. For that reason. It's a shame you'll have so many different radios, but they're all different modes. And that's sort of the way it is. I remember some time back, Mike, when I think you thought you could use the MMDVM with one radio. I don't know if you remember that. That was back a few months ago. But yeah, unfortunately, we had to buy a bunch of radios to do it. I'm sure it boosted sales, especially on the C4FM, P25, probably everything really. The MMDVM has certainly aroused a lot of interest in digital. Talking about digital, Mike, I was wondering if you guys were ever considering renaming the net the digital roundtable, because now with the event of more open source software and infrastructure in the other modes, DMR and other things besides D-Star. I think if you talk about the whole thing, which we're already doing on recent nets, but I think if you advertise the net as a digital round table, I'm sure you'd probably attract even more interest around the circles around the place. And I think it's sort of going that way, Mike. I don't know if you agree, but I agree also that you should probably forget about the closed source stuff. And I've got the same feelings as Bob has on the Mark guys, and they're very controlling and like blocking IDs and all that sorts of stuff. So we can forget about all that stuff, the Motorola camp. Even though I like Motorola, I don't like the club. But I just wonder what you thought about digital round table for the net name. Back to net control, VK4TUX, over.
VK4P.
Well, to answer it quickly so we can get on to the other stations, you're not the first one to suggest that. There's a couple of issues. One, having been a net controller over various modes for a long time, and given that this net is well known, it's been in existence about 9 years, I am really loath to change its name. There are, as a result, I think, of this roundtable, other nets have adopted the roundtable, quote unquote, name, even though they're mainly check-in nets. And I did a survey, and there are a fair number of so-called digital roundtables, digital nets that have put the word digital in there. And I hate to confuse this net with them. To me, those people that the stations that connect and participate or listen to by podcast or other recording, we can call it anything you want, but they understand the content, and that's really the important point. Is those that know this net know what it's about. But if somebody was looking for a truly all-mode, multi-mode digital type net and didn't know anything about nets, I guess they might choose a net with a different name. But D-Star is digital, and it would take something significant, I think, to get rid of this name just because it's well known. That's my thinking, but we'll see how it goes. I appreciate the suggestion, though. It is appropriate. W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, Mike. Yeah, well, I'll go bottoms up here and start with the idea of changing the name of the net. I'm a retired senior Air Force officer, and inordinately, that's the word I was looking for, inordinately large part of the U.S. Air Force budget well, most of the budget is devoted to actually space launch, satellites, all that kind of stuff. And there's been a raging debate for years about whether we should call ourselves the U.S. Air and Space Force or something like that. And we're still the U.S. Air Force. So there is significance in a brand and in a name, and we hold the net on D-Star. You may be able to get to it through DMR and Fusion, and who knows, maybe your analog telephone line someday. But I vote for keeping the name. I completely understand where Adrian's coming from, but we are holding the net on D-Star. All other modes are welcome to link in and participate with us, but when the day comes that we're holding the net only on DMR or only on some future digital mode on fiber optic mode or whatever, we can call ourselves the Thursday night fiber optic roundtable or whatever. But until then, I think we're good where we're at, and we can talk about digital modes, but we're doing it on D-Star with all the other modes welcome to come in and participate. So that's my 3 cents on that. Anyway, as far as let me change hands. Anyway, we shouldn't get into a food fight about the multi-mode repeaters. The bottom line is that, like I said, it's going to be an individual call by each sysop or system operator. The bottom line is that the existence of the hotspot means that anybody with $200 to spare can have, they can be Burger King. You can have it your way. And so if you build yourself a hotspot, an MMDVM hotspot, you can configure it any way you want. You can use any mode you want. And if you're a repeater operator, you have to operate understanding that every one of your users has that ability. So you have to come up with some kind of a balance, and only you can understand your user base and set it up so that the right number of people are happy or whatever. And so I'm all for not having a free for all over that. Not that we're doing that, but there's lots of different opinions. I think it's good to have the discussion because anybody who is or is considering running a multi-mode repeater system like what Don's doing needs to understand that going in so that they can structure it properly, and that properly is going to be completely dependent on their local circumstances. So enough said on that. Anyway, I've got another topic for us before we dig down into this rabbit hole too far. That might be of some interest. It's a current event that's going to be of some interest over the next week. So anyway, when we get done with this, come back to me. W6 Kitty, back to the net.
K6KD.
K6 Katie recognized. I will. And it's not just the consideration from the repeater owner administrator, and as you said, it's ultimately their choice, but also from the user, because there are more and more MMDVM repeaters going up. The considerations of throwing them up are probably not overlooked by most people. I don't think people just get out and buy one. Well, you just can't buy one, but they don't build one and just, especially if you have a pair. I mean, some thought goes into it. But from the user's standpoint, there isn't any known best practices, how to operate protocol, what to expect. And I found that as interesting as anything else, in that you're using an MMDVM repeater. What do you expect? Because most of them are open. I don't know of any that are closed. So that I found to be interesting. All right, anything further? Oh no, wait a minute. Let's go to K6KD, and then I'll make one more call if there are further comments. Then we'll close this and move on. But K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, this will just be a quick comment on, not on the branding, per se, but I just wanted to comment that yes, today this is just as Bob said, this is a DMR, a D-Star infrastructure. But as DMR becomes another mode that is natively supported by an increasing number of reflectors, that linked reflectors, then I think we should view, I'm not saying any name change necessarily, but I think we should view our infrastructure that it will be evolving, and it will be as much D-Star as DMR. DMR is D-Star, even with or without transcoding. So I just think that we should not have the viewpoint that this is only a D-Star infrastructure. Anyway, back to that.
So noted. Any further discussion concerning MMDVM repeaters? Last call for that. Key up, please. All right, nothing heard. Great discussion, guys. I appreciate it. Bob, before I give it to you for the mystery topic, there's a question in the shout box concerning the question from W0AKO. Is there any thoughts on the ability for Motorola repeaters to be able to connect to XLX-based systems in the future? That's the question. The station points out that today it is very easy to join a Motorola repeater to Brandmeister by simply configuring a single IP address in the code plug. I'm going to ask first if W6KD has a reply to that. If not, I'll ask for a response since we didn't get one posted. W6KD, go ahead.
No, I can't pull an answer for that one off the shelf, unfortunately. So that's. I am a hotspot guy. I mean, I think most people that have listened to me over the last 4 or 5 years understand that I'm I'm a local infrastructure, sort of build your own, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and like I said, Burger King, have it your own way in the luxurious confines of your own QTH. And I'm that kind of guy. So when it comes to hooking up repeater infrastructure and some of the other stuff out there, that's sort of out of my element. So there might be somebody else here that can answer that better than me.
VK4P.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think there was that capability, and I haven't seen any thoughts about doing it. There also, although the statement about it's easy to join a motor repeater to Brandmeister, well, of course. But the question is, connecting a Motorola repeater to an XLS-based reflector, I'm not sure the purpose of that would be. And but it's an interesting question. Okay, VK4TUX. There you go. I bet he has the answer. Go ahead. VK4TUX. Go ahead.
WE5EKU.
All right, no response from Adrian. We had a series of 3 key ups, so I'm wondering if that's an indication of packet loss. We may have to wait for him to key back up. WB5EKU, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'll take a stab at this. I have seen some emails about Motorola repeaters on the Brandmeister. I really don't read that much about it because I'm not a Motorola repeater fan, especially if they're running Moto Turbo. I like Bob, much more open source. I know that a while back, Moto Turbo kind of sort of opened the door when they let some DMR Plus into their. I really haven't seen too much about Brandmeister. But no, unless Adrian has something more about it, I don't know that it's very easy to join a Motorola repeater to a Brandmeister simply by configuring a single IP address in the code plug. Wow. If the Motorola repeater is on the Motorola C-Bridge, I don't know how that could be very easily done. But then again, I'm not that much of an expert, so I just want to throw that out there, Mike. It's HWP5KU.
VK4TUX. I answered the question before there, Mike. I'm not sure if I doubled with Don or something, but when I finished answering the question, I heard Don talking, so not sure what happened over.
Well, we didn't hear you when I called for you. There was no response after 2 calls, but it doesn't matter because you're here now. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Yes, I answered the question. There might have been a collision or something on the headers, and my transmission obviously didn't come through. But I'll just mention that I answered that question a few overs ago about the interaction between XLX and Brandmeister, and Artem and Luke working together, waiting for Luke to write the settable protocol that will be supported by Brandmeister for the connection between the two on the Intellect link connections on XLX and on the DMR reflector side of things. So there will be some connectivity between Brandmeister and XLX, and because of that, certainly Motorola repeaters will certainly be able to with XLX reflectors. There'll be nothing holding them back. So the answer is yes, and we just have to wait for the guys to finish their coding and get it together. But I spoke about that a few overs ago when I was talking about the comments from Artem from Brandmeister on his intention with Luke to bring that together. Artem.
Got it. Well, the question was, especially given the second sentence, of course you can't connect a Motorola repeater to, well, Brandmeister's not a C-bridge, so, but I took it as being, can you, is there a way for the Motorola repeater to connect to directly to XLX? And as you explained earlier, sure you can, but it's going to be through Brandmeister, so there's going to be, which makes sense to me. And I appreciate you answering that question for that station. And, 5G, you're welcome. But then you were trying to link, so you won't hear this. All right. Time for tonight's mystery topic. W6KD, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, yeah, this is a bit of a departure from the discussion we've been having, but we've talked numerous times about emergency communications and D-Star and cellular systems and how fast they can be reconstituted. And anyway, we have a major, potentially wide-scale disaster unfolding in front of us. I speak with a little bit of skin in the game because my youngest son lives down in Houston, and we have Hurricane Harvey headed for Port Lavaca, about halfway between Corpus Christi and Houston, and it's going to come ashore as a Cat 3 or Cat 4 hurricane, according to the Hurricane Center, sometime around late Friday night to Saturday morning, and then it's going to park right over about 20 to 30 miles inland. The center of that storm is gonna basically start wandering around in small circles, and it's gonna dump. Right now, the forecasts are for up to 35. Get this, 35 inches of rain in localized areas between Corpus Christi and Houston, and going all the way inland to San Antonio and beyond the hill country in Texas. So we have a natural disaster about to unfold in front of our eyes that's going to involve inundation and flooding over a massive area if it pans out even halfway like what they're forecasting right now. So it will be of great interest to me to watch how the disaster response unfolds. And, some of the discussions we've had over the last year or two about, emergency deployment of cellular systems and the efficacy and relevancy of ham radio's emergency communication service is all going to come to the forefront here in the next 4 days. So, worth watching, worth, keeping an eye on, worth a couple of prayers for all the people that are in that area. It's a discussion probably worth having ahead of time, and definitely worth some after-action review to see how it all pans out. Because I'll bet you anything that they get a lot of comm infrastructure up and running almost before you can blink. And how that pans out is important, and it's relevant to how we do reset.
VL.
Anyway, it's relevant to how we do emergency communications and the whole discussion about it, too. I'm sure the ARRL will be chomping at the bit to be in there, and they'll have a teenager tapping out Morse code on a homebrew, Heathkit Cheyenne, and they'll declare that the world was saved by that person. But, in reality, what we do and how we do it's going to be relevant here, and it's going to come to, I'm sure that there's a bunch of, Races and Aries guys down there that are going to actually be working hard to make something out of the emergency response down there. But anyway, it's about to happen. It's right there in front of us, and I'm bringing the subject up because it's interesting to observe it ahead of time. Hurricanes are one of the most predictable, in terms of nature's great slaps in the face. So we can see what's coming at us a few days out. So how's it gonna unfold? And what is ham radio's role really going to be? We in addition to the retrospection that always follows a disaster like this, where everybody wants to declare victory because we saved the world, let's take a look at it ahead of time as we enter into this.
W-E-5-E-K.
Good point. And it just so happens that I took a look at what ARRL plans to do in preparation for tonight's roundtable, although I didn't intend to call it as a specific topic, but I'm glad you did for the reasons you did. And it's of course, D-Star is not included with anything that the Hurricane Watch group or ARRL or anyone else intends to employ. Officially, at least as has been reported in the ARRL letter for tonight, which covered Hurricane Harvey. But there are some interesting things which can also be pointed out going back to August of 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit generally the same area, although it was a little bit more north toward New Orleans. What should we be doing? And how best to watch and listen to what's going on, given that, well, anyway, you've heard Bob's discussion, and you've heard my comments. Let's see what you have to say. WB5EKU, go ahead.
VL2.
I think that's quite relevant. That's what Philip in there. It's quite relevant because, Bob, Mike, and John, everybody in Southern California knows, or California, or the West Coast, that we have a potential staring us in the face all the time. We don't get the radar, and we don't get the 3 days out. And I think all this is relevant. I think it's something we need to learn. I think it's something that this phrase might be beat to death too many times, but we have to prepare ourselves for it. We have to be prepared for this stuff. We don't know when we're going to have a 2.0 or we're going to have an 8.0. You bet my prayers go out to those people there. I used to work in television in New Orleans, and I went through quite a few hurricanes, and we had to shoot a fair amount of news film in some pretty depressing areas, watching some of this stuff happen. So I know, firsthand. But I think emergency preparedness is we should learn from this, and that should maybe be an ongoing topic for the roundtable, Mike. HWB5EKU.
Thank you, Don. ZL2WD, go ahead. I have ZL2WD on the screen. If it was inadvertent, say so. Otherwise, go ahead. All right, no response from that station. Well, for those of us, or for those of you who have been following the roundtable from the very beginning, you'll remember that we had a special roundtable in 2005 during which the local amateur radio club members, including the South Texas section manager Jay Miller, W5WHN, and others, joined us to talk about their response to Hurricane Katrina. And the reason why we had them on is not to talk about HF, but that D-Star was one of the few communication modes that they were able to utilize, and in fact, ultimately, a combination National Guard and Army Corps whose own communication infrastructure was completely wiped out. You know, keep in mind that Hurricane Katrina was a Category 5 hurricane when it hit, and it was an extremely destructive storm. And I think it still is the costliest natural disaster that has hit the United States in history. I mean, there were certainly severe storms, but in any event, they turned over the D-Star communication capability, the local group did, with the approval of the state leaders for communications, which, oddly enough, were also licensed hams. And the Army National Guard utilized those frequencies until they were able to set up and establish their own communications. This time, independent of ARRL, the South Texas sections has established an incident communications plan, which is available online. You can punch through some of the links that ARRL put out, although they don't talk about it. And some of that includes UHF and VHF, including D-Star. And why? Because D-Star survived. Nothing else did. Now, we've had several discussions about how cell phones and commercial communications were quickly reestablished during the tornado season, and whether that is going to be able to beat, supplant, and make basically, I don't want to say useless, but of little incident, any amateur radio communications, which are still hung up on HF and, of all things, VoIP involving, hang on. Well, anyway, and VoIP. So, and I was struggling for the phrase to describe VoIP Hurricane Net for relay. So that's it, and that's Skywarn. And so it's a local amateur radio group that will likely be carrying the load and putting things and actually providing the likely practical communications, and not the legacy stuff that ARRL still taunts. And anyway, the 6 stations. I've got W6CJX and W6KD. We had ZL2WD in order, but and he's keyed back up again now. So let's go back first to get ZL2WD. Go ahead. All right, ZL2WD still having difficulty getting in, or the cat's grabbed the mic and is playing with the push to talk. W6CJX, welcome. Go ahead.
Well, good evening, Mike, and everyone all on the net tonight there. Yeah, I guess with that hurricane that's coming up there through Texas, all of our friends, and thinking of Connie down there, she's in the path. So, and I just wanted to say the other night I came home, I was listening and checked into the 100 Watts in the Wire podcast, so I was happy to hear that was linked in on Don's, I guess it's on all the constellations, so that's very, very cool. So, no, just
to say hello and let you know I'm on the net tonight, and hope things are all well with everyone abound. So good net as always, Mike, and just wanted to say hello. For W6, CJ, back to net control.
All right, Bob, thanks for being with us. Always good to hear from you. W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, well, this is if it pans out as forecast, this is going to be a wide-scale flood event. Katrina was such a large monetary disaster, not because it was a Cat 5 hurricane. It was because the levees broke in New Orleans and flooded the 9th district or the 9th ward, and the flooding in New Orleans is what made it the disaster that it was. It wasn't the strength of the storm. It was the failure of those levees and the flooding in New Orleans that did that. Well, if you look at the forecast rainfall over this area, it's stunning, to be honest. I severely hope that it doesn't pan out like they're forecasting. But they're saying 35 inches of rain in localized areas, 2 feet of rain in the onshore areas, which could include the Houston metro area. And, like the Stevie Ray Vaughan song about it's flooding down in Texas, it's all of the telephone lines are down. When you have inundational flooding, it wreaks havoc on comm lines and stuff. So I think it will be very instructive for us to watch and learn from what happens down there and the response. I believe that we're going to see the cell companies and the communications infrastructure spring back rapidly because they're very good at what they do. And when you're watching the Weather Channel reporting, think about where is that coming from? How is it there's a reporter down there and I'm watching him real time on television in my house in Massachusetts or Colorado or wherever? Think about that, because I think we operate under outmoded and outdated ideas about our utility in the world and how emergency communications, where the need is and how we fit into all that. I strongly believe that Races and Aries are dinosaurs. They're still trying to provide support to the disaster before last. They don't react. They don't reorganize and reset. Anyway, they do not. They're not responsive to modern needs. They're still trying to solve the problems of 10 years ago. And so I think for every one of us, we ought to watch with a critical eye what's happening down there, the communications issues in particular, and form our own opinions about where we fit in or if we still fit in, and independent of, if you left it to the ARRL, they'd still be sending radiograms via CW, health and welfare messages, via Morse code. I'm only saying that half facetiously. So here we have a very, very interesting, potentially devastating, but a learning experience for all of us who aren't in the affected areas. So let's learn. Let's watch. Let's see how it pans out. And, ask yourself those questions, is there any evidence that people weren't able to talk to each other, that emergency services wasn't able to go where they're needed, etc.? That's what we're about, is communications. I think we're going to find that emergency communications works pretty darn good, even in a wide area disaster like this, especially when there's a little bit of warning ahead of time. So, but look at it with a critical eye. I think we're going to discover that, The situation isn't what's assumed anymore. It's far from it. Anyway, back to that W6K.
All right, well, ZL2WD got you again. We're going to give it another shot. Go ahead. All right, ZL2WD N6HKH. I take it that unless you're beaconing, which is not likely, that you're keying up between transmissions, but we're getting your key up, which is appropriate. And then when we call on you, there is no response. And if you think you're transmitting, you're not. At least you're not getting through to the net. We're not hearing anything. No packet. No, not even R2D2. So you might want to check things out. Stations, comments. Please key up. Well, perhaps. I got no response on this. I'm a little surprised because I know that there are certainly a number of hurricane watchers and hurricane enthusiasts and those that, as part of the amateur hobby, spend their time listening to disasters and responses. They're not part of the group or not even near it. It's not clear to me how best to monitor what they're doing. I don't think listening, although certainly you can, but the point is I don't think listening to the Hurricane WatchNet on low bands is going to answer the question posed by Bob. And I'm not certain if there are specific reflectors, although I'm still searching. I know that they've got some D-Star repeaters involved in some nets, but it looks like they're only interconnected. That is, they're not independently. Hang on. Referencing any reflectors, or just a lot of analog and a couple of digital repeaters that are part of a network, at least in South Texas. So it's not clear to me, and maybe somebody can help us out, where best from a D-Star perspective to listen. Certainly we can watch what's going on TV, and hopefully we'll be able to identify some stations that did assist and were involved in communications, and hopefully they're much like the guys from New Orleans who were able to identify, and I found out that D-Star was it for communications for a while. Of course, that was 2005. That's quite a long time ago. And but during the course of the hurricane, nobody knew. Now, if TV stays up, and I'm not sure that that's possible, but if we are going to watch the event, it is going to be interesting to see, what the reporters are doing. I mean, during the tornado, several tornadoes, not this season, but last, the newscasters were, on the air saying, "Oh my God, we have no cell service. All communications are down. Woe is us. Where's Red Cross? What are we going to do? Do we get solo cups and a string?" And then there's some guy right behind him who's on the cell phone from FEMA. And then there's another reporter down the road who's on the cell phone to a station. So, I don't know. Comments? Please, Kia. Well, nothing seen or heard. Bob, your point is well taken, and it's an important aspect to monitor, and it will prove, hopefully, to be a great topic. And I am going to work this time as I did, in 2005 to, when that was running in 2005, we've been running far more. Did I say 9 years? Holy mackerel. It's got to be 12 or 13 years this net has run. And that even digs me in deeper over not changing the name. Man, I just, you get older, your memory slips. Anyway, trying to track down some of the guys that were involved in providing communications and get what we can, or learn what we can, I should say, about digital modes, what worked, what didn't, what stayed up, what went down, and if they were called into service, and if they, basically backed their cars up over the, Aries and races and low band nets, and the guys, desperately trying to pound out on a key to get out a notice to someone who knows where, and instead got on the air right away. I'm also going to see if I can't figure out if there's going to be a reflector involved somewhere. I mean, sure, somebody's thought about that. I can't believe there's no D-Star users down there. Of course there is. All right, anything further on this? Well, I've already asked that, and there's no key-ups. Let's do this instead. Anything further for this net? Is there another topic? Is there a question that we need to answer? Anything that you heard during the course of this net you'd like to comment on? Because it's probably time for us to bring this to an end, just because I'm about worn out. So, stations, please, Kia. KC5ALH. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I'll just tell you it's a little early yet, and I don't think anything has been officially established, but I will tell you where I've heard a little bit of traffic so far about the hurricane situation. I've heard a little bit on of course, a lot of us hang out on X reflectors more than anything else, but I've heard a little bit of traffic about the hurricane on the regular D plus REF 004 Bravo, and then over on the C4 FM stuff on the Texas room, FCS2, and then dash 43. So far, that's the only two places I've heard any conversation, but I don't think these places have been officially designated, but there's people from down around that area, the threatened area, that's connected up into on those two reflectors, and there's been quite a bit of conversation about it. KC5ALH, Paul Big Spring.
Paul, thanks for that, and you remind us that it's disaster communications that are sanctioned. We don't know much more than what's been on some of the activation sheets for the various amateur services, some of which are not in coordination with ARRL, but are just being provided by the local clubs. But, as you point out, that doesn't mean that we can't listen on the reflectors that geographically cover the Gulf states, and perhaps we may learn, what's happening at the time it's happening, and get a better handle on where to look and listen for actual D-Star traffic concerning the hurricane. That would be so cool. And then, of course, I would like to grab some of these stations after things settle down and say what worked, what didn't, how did it go. Much like the guys that we had for Katrina, and they were, it was such a cool thing for them to volunteer their time to tell us. In fact, we had, I won't get into that because it doesn't matter, but still, I think Bob's purpose in talking about this is well put. Thanks, Paul. Stations, please, key up. All right. Without further ado, I hate that cliche. I don't even know what it means. We're going to bring this edition of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable to a close. I want to thank all of the stations that keyed up. Without your participation, there would be no D-Star Roundtable. Of course, we should say D-Star and Open Digital Systems. The Shoutbox will be cleaned up and moved over to the Shoutbox history. The podcast should be up by at least early morning tomorrow. Tomorrow for me, here on the West Coast being Friday. The constellation of X-Reflectors, which are listed on our D-Star Roundtable Forum board at roundtable, all one word, .tech, T-E-C-H, is open and available anytime you so choose. And if there is anything of interest to listen to, this would be one of several that you could broadcast and let us know, in addition to posting it on the Shoutbox, which once we clean it out still remains open, so that we can perhaps watch and listen not just on TV but on this hobby to what's going down in Texas and the Gulf Coast. Of course, I hope that the amateurs do the right thing. That I hope that nobody gets hurt or injured. It's so unlikely that there will not be deaths and other injuries because people living there just don't listen. They want to protect their homes, much like the homeowners that try to protect their homes from fires. Then they end up getting trapped and burned to the ground along with the structure. But we'll have to see. This is just a limited TV I've seen. I don't have to tell anybody, especially those that live there. This is a major, big to-do. I just hope everybody's safe. Anyway, we'll be listening. We'll see you next Thursday. I have nothing further. After break, I'll be back here a little bit later. Certainly, we look forward to talking to you on D-Star tomorrow and over the weekend. So, with the voice about to go, N6HKH, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, Mike. Very good net. WB5EKU.
W6KBM.
KF0LF, W6KD. Hey, Denny, you out there?